Do you know the Wi-Fi for here?
Yes.
I'm not.
Why would I answer that question? Go on. All caps. City. O-N-E.
Hold on. O-N-E.
And then it should be an exclamation point, but it might be the number one.
It's an exclamation point.
Exclamation point.
Somebody who predates me wrote it in my desk. Yeah.
Oh, excellent.
Okay.
Ladies and gentlemen, our government at work.
Well, good evening. It's County Council Economic Development Committee, Tuesday, June 28th. Call to order. Council member Katie LaFarge-Shu.
Here.
Council member Emily Falco.
Here.
Also here is Mayor Jack and City Administrator Greg McTuff. And in the gallery is County Council member Scott Harrington, but you may or may not be able to see him. And our community development, Judy Penman, which I know you're not going to be able to see because she's directly under the camera.
Scott can sit there, can he? You want?
He likes the hard view. Is there any corrections to the minutes that were provided digitally before this meeting?
Not that I saw.
I wasn't present, but I watched the meeting and it looked good to me.
We'll accept the minutes as presented. And we'll move on to topic A.
Sure. So, homestead tax consumption is something that I've been hearing about for a little while. It's effectively a lower tax rate for folks who are residents of so it's a lower tax rate on their primary property. I had sent this to Jenny and Greg a few months ago, and I don't know if you guys have had any time to prepare, or if you'd like to hear consensus from some members of council that this is something that we'd be interested in. And I think, for me, understanding the financial implications of it is important, and then I think balancing that with the potential for tax relief not only on our existing residents, but as an incentive for people to want to live here and live in town. I live in a student housing saturated neighborhood, and so for me, the idea that there's a benefit to an owner-occupied home in my neighborhood is really, enticing. So I don't know if you guys have any thoughts, or if Greg, you want to speak on it a little bit, if you're prepared to do that. I just am opening up the conversation.
I guess I'd be happy to hear your thoughts on it at this point. I don't have any
Okay.
really hard and fast thoughts. I think we definitely want to check with the assessor and maybe talk about, as we read through and talks about when you do a revaluation, that's when this goes into effect.
Mm-hmm.
I believe the city did a revaluation in 2013. I'm not sure if anyone.
Later.
16?
Yeah, ish.
Later. Yeah, that's all I have to add right now.
Okay, so we would probably have to do that again.
And that's where I was at, when I asked if you had an opportunity to reach out to Hank Shecker yet.
Me?
Yeah.
No, I have not.
Okay. He is a depth of knowledge of doing shared services with the county. He's in charge of the county's assessors department. And
He came to our meeting, correct? Is that the same person?
yes.
When we
Yeah, one of these
when we
One of our meetings, I'm trying to remember what.
Legislative thing?
Was it?
Yeah, it was legislative. That's what it was
Okay,
at.
then I wasn't there.
So he would be a good one to bring in. I find it interesting. I was reading it also. I actually tried to see if they actually had under Office of Real Properties, they have their own division, but they don't. So did you also be able to find out any other communities that have done this?
No, I haven't looked into that.
What I can do is I'll send an email out to Hank, asking him to come to our next meeting so that we could hear more about this.
That would be great, thank
And
you.
then, could you just see if you can find any communities that have done this?
I think on the PDF that was included, one of the Q and A's is it says there's 12 cities, 17 towns. It looks like there's only like
Oh, cool.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
The municipal profiles on our website.
Cool.
And then I guess along these lines, Katie sent out a couple other emails, one to me on the veterans tax deduction, and
It's a property tax, it's also a property tax.
that's right, and then what was the other one?
The other one was about, for housing, parents and grandparents, which I thought, you know, as a goal of the housing commission to find a way for seniors to, keep the phrase age in place. And, yeah, I just thought that that might be. of
Yeah, no,
interest.
I appreciate seeing that too, hand that up to that work group as it's assembled.
Yeah, I figured if they see value in it, they can make the recommendation to council, that'd be good. Yeah.
Okay, so you're going to sign this one, right?
Yeah, yes.
Topic D, if I remember correctly, both Katie and Ellen, you were going to get assigned, or you already are assigned to a marketing committee.
We are, and yeah, we have not.
Not yet.
Okay. So why don't we hold on that?
I can provide a little bit of info. So looking at, I forget what I was talking about, I think it's you, we're talking about the folks that need to be part of this ad hoc. It's important that they don't have any skin in the game in terms of a desire to be generating any income off of this. So I've already spoken with the new president of Harvard College and Margaret Drugovich in a conversation around bringing somebody in from their media and marketing department. We're going to do the same thing with SUNY. It makes a lot of sense to do the same thing with Bassett Hospital, and it makes maybe a bit of sense to bring in Marcella from GOHS, and then of course Judy and myself, and that I think is probably going to form a committee that will then be robust enough and engaged enough in terms of the overall strategizing and the impact of that strategy. And then we can start to look at the folks that are trying to make a living in the community and determine the assets and what it is that we're looking to do in terms of bringing players into this that we mobilize. So we're a little bit of ways away, but we're not that far away.
Yeah,
So
that sounds
I'll keep
great.
both of you folks up to speed, Katie and on my outreach to these agencies that I just talked about, and see what kind of commitments they'll make. I already have a commitment from Hardwick. Wasn't taking no for an answer. I'm seeing about her tomorrow morning.
Good. Great.
Judy, would you like to update the committee on topic C, grant or loans possibilities?
As they relate to businesses, but, okay. So we have, it's not available right now, but we applied, I'm hoping that we'll be applying annually for the microenterprise program. So that's it's a grant that we apply to the state and then businesses can apply to us for grants of between $5,000 and $35,000 for businesses existing and new businesses that are located in the city and have 5 or fewer employees and owners. They can purchase equipment that is standalone portable equipment. It can't be something that's installed permanently. It can be working capital, inventory, rent, any of their expenses to run the business, payroll, and electronics and things like that. We just right now are going to be awarding 5 or 6 to our current microenterprise grant. Hopefully we'll know this week or next week exactly how much they'll be and who. I know who they are, but I'm not sure if it's going to be 5 or 6 and how much each business is getting. But that's going to be $158,000 that we're awarding. That will wrap up that micro, and then hopefully this fall at some point we'll apply for another one if there's some demand. We can now apply on an as-needed basis. So it used to be you could apply only every year in the CFA, and we did it kind of every other year usually. But now I'd like to get it to be more attuned to what people are coming in for and asking for. So that program is a Community Development Block Grant Program, which is CDBG. There are 2 other CDBG economic development programs that we can tap into. These we apply for an individual business to the state, and then we administer the funding for one business, and the businesses come to us, or if we're marketing the programs or they hear about it, then they come in, and if they're eligible, then we can apply on their behalf. So they're both CDBG programs. One is called Small Business. That's for businesses with 25 and fewer employees. It's kind of similar to the microenterprise program in that you can use it for equipment. You could use it for building renovations, but then it triggers prevailing wages, and that uses up a lot of your budget. So we suggest that they use it for similar to the micro portable equipment and things like that, working capital. It can also be used for acquisition. And that way they can apply for up to $100,000 in grant. The grant has to be no more than 40% of the total project cost. They have to have, I think it's 20% equity in cash. And, for every $25,000 in grant, they need to create 1 full-time equivalent job. Over on the micro, for any amount of grant that they get, they have to either create 1 full-time equivalent job, or they themselves, the business owners, have to be low to moderate income. So on the small business program, they have to create 1 job for every $40,000 or every $25,000. The other program is very similar to that, except it's called the Economic Development Program. That is for businesses larger than 25 employees, and they can apply for up to $750,000. And again, the grant has to be no more than 40% of the total project cost, so that's really for big projects. And they have to create 1 full-time equivalent for each $15,000 in grant money. So those are available for businesses that fit the requirements. So it's basically if they can create those jobs and they're expanding or they're starting a new business, or they're buying a business, we can use those 2 funds to help them out. Yeah.
So I was getting and agreeing with the every 25,000 equals 1 employee, because if you think about it, you're paying someone $15,000 or $15 an hour, 2,080 hours. You're almost there. Besides, you have FICA left over. But to go up to $750,000 for every 15K, you've got to come up with an employee. You're behind the 8 ball on that one immediately.
That's a state. It's a state requirement. So we don't have any choice in that. And yeah, it's for larger companies, larger projects, and large job creation, if they're going for that level. We haven't had one that's been that big. We did have Bombers was one of the economic development one. They got a $400 and some thousand grant, and they had to create, I think, 30 some jobs. And yeah, it can be onerous.
Yeah, I mean, I guess though, if you need the people, like in the example of Bombers, like they needed that staff. So if it's jobs like above and beyond what you would need, then I could see your point. But if it's people that you need to hire anyway, then it's a great way to have those funds. And, you know, if you're already doing that based on your just normal order of operations.
But then it's just a one-time deal for 1 year, right?
Right, but at least you hope to get ahead and get established, right?
Right.
If you were to restart your business and you had 15 employees, you'd want that seed money to get you going, to plan it.
So our grants with the state, those all three of those grants, the term is 2 years. It takes a few months in the beginning of the project to get the grant agreement with the state, environmental review, all that stuff done. So we usually have about 21 months of working time, a true contract term that we could use with the grantees. But the grantees can use the money for payroll. So they can use that, 21 months of that grant can be paying that, a good chunk of that payroll. They can use it for anything. If they buy a property, they could use it, for the purchase price. Bombers actually use some of our loan for the loan, or our grant, to pay the loan payments that they had for the loan that they got from the state to buy the building. So there's all kinds of uses that you can spend that money on.
So do you feel that these 3 grant programs are something that we should be marketing, given that we have 2 council members that are going to be on a marketing subcommittee? Is that something that needs to be pushed out there to existing and?
I think my plan is to do more of that. I haven't been able to up until now because it's just been me. But yeah, that's definitely something that we could be working on to get the word out more. I mean, the microenterprise program, we do market that when we get one. We send the application materials out to the chamber, to DO, to the Small Business Development Center. They email blast the materials out to all of their members. So I think we get really good coverage on that one. The other grants are such a specific grant that, if we did that, we're not necessarily hitting the people that need it or that could use it, because a lot of times it's your new business people and they're not chamber members yet, they're not DO members yet, they're not established yet. So, we need to find ways to market that. But yeah, that was a long answer for a short yes.
Can we go back to the microenterprise grant? I thought I wrote down for that one, the supply as needed. Could you explain just a little bit more on that? Because I remember that we apply as a city, it was 250,000?
Yeah, so we can, up until now, we've applied for $200,000. The program just recently changed in the last year or two, where it was in the consolidated funding application, and I believe it was limited to 200. We limited it to that because of capacity, because trying to administer it, and we always have multiple micros going on at the same time. It's a lot. They've increased the limit now up to $300,000, and they put it out as an open round, which means we can apply for it when we need to. So we don't have to apply for it in a CFA in July.
Okay.
If we need one, if we want to start one, because we've had a couple of businesses contact us and they're ready to go, and they can wait long enough for us to get an application in and get everything in process, which is, months. We could send one in this October. I don't have to wait till July. And now that we have capacity in community development with staff, we should be able to administer some more at the same time. I'm limited on how often I can submit, only by we either have to have 50% of it allocated or 50% of it spent. I keep forgetting to look that up, that distinction. If it's 50% allocated, we'll be there next week, I believe. If it's 50% spent, then we just have to get a little bit further down the road where they've spent the money and we've submitted for it. And then at that point, we can apply again, if we have a need for it. So I kind of like this to become more of a really good working tool for us, so that when we have businesses that need a micro, I can throw a couple together and get an application in and help them immediately, rather than have to keep waiting
Right, for that
for another
cycle.
round, and then they drop out, they're not interested, and then we're, so this way we can be really proactive, I think.
Cool.
And again, that one was from 5 to 30,000?
5 to 35.
Okay, 5 to 35, and you have to have 5 employees?
At the time of application, the business has to have 5 or fewer employees and owners by head count.
5 or fewer, okay.
Yeah, and then once they get the grant, they can have 25. They don't care. They would have to either create one job for a low to moderate income person, or they themselves as owners would have to be low to moderate income, because it has to be one of those meets their national objective, because this is federal funding coming down through the state.
So do they break that information down into some simple bullets that is a great handout to local businesses?
Yeah, actually,
I have.
yes, we have in the past, and we put those out.
Yeah, I got an email with it, and somewhere I have to dig it out and find it, but, yeah, I just have to tweak it, because sometimes there's changes each year, like there's business training that's required before we can spend any of the money or reimburse them, and, but that, I do have that all ready to go in a handout.
So a business could actually get reimbursed?
This is a reimbursement program. So they have to put out the 35, if they get a $35,000
Sure.
grant, I can only submit to the state twice. And my submittals are based on their invoices and their canceled checks or proof of payment through credit card.
So what is that time period from when they bought the working capital to?
So I talked to each grantee and asked them what term would work for them. And some can get it wrapped up in 6 months or less, and other people are like, give me the full 18 to 21 month term that I can get, and they need the entire time. So that's flexible based on their needs.
So it has to be a project that they haven't done yet?
Right, they
Oh, okay.
can't spend any money that they want to be reimbursed, and they can't hire the person that they want to be, or the job that they want to be included as the national objective until they have their award letter. And then once they get the award letter, we do a grant agreement with them, and the grant agreement is effective the date of the award letter. Even if it takes me a month to get it done, it's always back to the award letter. So as soon as they get the award letter in their hand, they can go ahead and start spending money, they can hire whoever they're gonna hire. And then they can, at some point about halfway through the grant, they can submit their receipts, and we submit that to the state, and within a month or so, we get a wire transfer, and then we get them a check. And then they have to do it again the second time for the second piece. That is something you guys might be able to help us with, brainstorming. That's very, very hard for these grantees to do. They cannot get that money up a lot of times. They're borrowing from friends, they're using, family credit cards and stuff to come up with $18,000, even $5,000 sometimes, until they can get it reimbursed, and then, they're paying that back to whoever they've borrowed from. And, so that's a difficult thing. I don't know, I'd have to talk to Ginny about it. I don't know if there's a way that we could set up loan fund, like we have done for the DRI.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking. I was like, like if there was some way that the city could kind of just help to front the money, knowing that it's going to be reimbursed.
Yeah.
I know it's a little risky,
It is risky.
but I do know that, from talking with most business owners down here, like you said, even coming up with $5,000 is going to be tough.
Yep. So with the DRI, the way that we did the DRI, we had a short-term loan fund available that was city funds. And it could be no more than their grant amount. And we did it so they turned their invoices into us. And then we wrote city checks to the vendor, two-party checks to the vendor and the grantee. And then we were able to use those canceled checks as proof of payment when we submitted in for the reimbursement to the state. And when the state reimbursed the grant, then we kept the reimbursement to pay back our loan. So I don't know if that's something that we could consider doing for the micro. Our micro total is $200,000. We keep $22,000 out for program delivery and admin costs to help support the city work on it. So we have $178,000 at any given time. And I don't know if that's something that we could.
So we're not going to move up to the 300,000?
Well, we could, but that's going to depend, for me, that is going to depend on the capacity in the department and the need. Because I don't want to submit for $300,000 and then not be able to spend it, because they do not like that, and we do not want to turn money back in. So if I had $300,000 worth of projects, then yes. If I don't, then I have to do a lot of thinking about that.
Right, but it's that lag time that the state creates that's hurting the small business out there.
For the application process, you mean?
No, for the payment, you just,
Oh, the payment,
they're
yeah.
out there borrowing, they're using credit cards, friends, family, for their money.
Yeah. Yeah. that's-
So maybe, can we bring this particular item back next month so that we can have time to kind of digest that, come up with some ideas of how maybe government could step in? That's a tricky situation, because even on 5,000, you're still going to want some equitable asset to hold.
Well, you would have their, yeah, so, all right. We need to make sure that they are meeting that national objective. So if they're low to moderate income owners, they're already meeting that. So we're good to go there. And then we would actually have the invoices of what they're purchasing, so we know that they're actually purchasing stuff. But we'd also have to, I don't know if our finance department would allow payments on rent and things like that. So that's another question, like what, if we could help, are we limited on what we can pay for too? You know, can we pay for payroll and rent and stuff like that?
Oh, so you're suggesting that we would make those payments rather than writing that business a check?
Yeah, I would not write the business a check. I would do it like we did with the DRI, which was doing a two-party check. Doing a two-party check, because if you write the business a check, you have, like you said, you have nothing there. But if you're writing a two-party check
Right.
for equipment, you're not writing that without the invoice.
Sure.
And you're writing it to the vendor.
Right.
But then it's the whole working capital issue, which, I mean, I don't know if we could write a two-party check to like National Grid, you know? I don't know how that would work, so, and I don't know if we could, I don't know if that's considered a community purpose, or, I don't know. So there's a lot of Ginny questions in this, but I know we did it through the DRI, but the DRI was also for signage and facades and upper floor housing, and that was, finite, actual specific things happening, not just working capital.
Yeah, well, and you said you can use it for like payroll too, so that would be challenging. I think.
Yes, yeah, you can't do a two-party check to an employee.
Right.
So,
But I think.
but you have proof of payroll to reimburse, if we reimburse their payroll, you have proof of the payroll, but I don't know how the state would look at that. So there's a whole lot of questions there. The other option might be if we could get some support from local banks.
Yeah, that's exactly.
So if they have a grant agreement should be a pretty good, solid thing for a bank to be able to do a short-term loan for. So that, and maybe we can have some sway with encouraging the banks to help us with that.
It might make some sort of sense, if I can just kind of interject here, that you guys are going to have further conversation about this, obviously, and as you start to strategize a plan of action, it might then make some sort of sense to bring a willing participant from, one of the banks into the conversation to see how a third party might allow a lot more flexibility around, dealing with this type of issue and other issues that are similar that you've been laid out there, establishing a precedent of somebody in the community acting as essentially a third party to, allow this to.
Can you find that email and send me the bullet points, or just send me all the information so I can digest it? Because I think this is one of those programs that I see an immediate need. I don't know if you guys are, but I'm seeing an immediate need for small business owners. They're not necessarily having to create a job to get it.
The micro enterprise.
Yeah, the micro enterprise, they're just proving it. And so, $35,000 for a small business, I don't know, would go a long ways.
Yeah. Mhm.
So,
Can I ask a question? With regard to bringing in banks, makes sense to me. I mean, it's similar though, if they're gonna do like a short-term loan, they're gonna want to charge interest on that, and sort of back to your point, Len, of like being behind that at that point, then you end up going more, over your grant to a bank. Is that really like a good position?
well, they'll get their money earlier, which would help them. I understand what you're saying with that interest, but
Right,
on
right, but-
18 months, is that typically what you're saying, 12 to 18 months, they gotta hold this note on?
No, not necessarily. We would have to hold it half of that.
Half of that.
Because we would be halfway through, we'd be submitting a request for reimbursement in. So whatever their grant amount, if it's 20,
Right.
you figure when you're around 10, we submitted,
Okay, yeah, like 8%, well, I should say, let's say 6.5, give or take, on a commercial loan for 9 months. That's definitely doable. You figure that into your estimate of whatever you're buying. And the fact that you could get the equipment up and running and start making revenue off of it, rather than all your family. I see a lot of capabilities on that one.
You're also looking at, in a small city, we have banks and bankers that are invested in the community, and the banks stand to do better in a more robust and healthy economy. And what I was suggesting in terms of bringing a banker into the conversation was, in fact, to bring them into the conversation as problem solvers.
Right.
So,
But I think
and allow them to
answer
find
these questions
waivers.
first.
Exactly.
From Jenny, of whether we can do this or not, and how far can we go? And then maybe, as what you're kind of alluding to, is with the second on their small interest or small term loan with the bank.
I'd rather do the bank, honestly, because we actually are at risk. If they don't meet the requirements, the state will claw the money back from us, and we will have to try to claw the money back from them. And it's hard to claw anything out of not much, so, on some of these startups. So I think we already have a risk doing the grant. So if the banks could step in with what they do, that would be my.
Well, that's kind of like having the farmers, right? We were like the level bank in terms of their, we loaned them money, and then we ended up, because they wouldn't satisfy that at all.
Yeah, for the loan portion, we had a small loan towards the end of that project. The rest was a grant. They actually, for the $420,000 grant, they actually had met the requirements, and we were set with the state. So we had no loss on that grant, but there was a small loan that came out of our old UDAG money, and that's what we lost, was $56,000, because we were standing.
That sounds
You're second.
We're second.
50K.
Because the state small business loan was first. But yeah, we didn't lose the grant because they had met the job requirement. They had everything met the state's requirements for the grant. I'll get you that information. I just wanted to say, we just did the round. did a pretty thorough job of getting the word out. It went up on our social media. They said it went to the Chamber of DO, Small Business Center, and we had 7 applications for 150. We already had 20 out that had already been awarded. I had a number of people that were basically desperate for it, and they did not apply. Don't know why that. I don't know why. Well, I knew
I wonder if
this is why.
I wonder if it would be helpful then to, in terms of understanding how we could market these better, to understand why those people choose not to apply. I don't know how we can approach that, but I mean, I think that, you know, how do we make these grants more approachable?
Well, approachable. They have to take business training. So if they do what we request, which is contact Michelle Caden at the Small Business Center, Development Center, and work with her. She helps them prepare the application, their business plan, and gives them the business training. So we have that resource right here on Main Street. It's an excellent resource to show anybody that's interested in the micro. So that part is there. But it's still a lot of work. Our business training is 2 solid days all day, and it's mandatory. They have to take business training, and they have to do a business plan. That's mandatory as well. And that takes a lot of work and a lot of thinking. And the application, I mean, to me it looks easy, but it's there's a lot to the application. A lot of things that they need to include in it, which are required. But they have Michelle. Our not supposed to be elected, and she's awesome, but that's there. So I think I don't know. Somebody told me recently that money is intimidating. Coming up with your share from the activity yours is intimidating.
That's what I was, because these are were reimbursable ones. Sorry not to interrupt.
Yeah, no.
That's probably why.
Yeah.
I probably feel that if I could have come up with money, do I really need you? But
Well, it's like, I own a farm, I own a small business. $35,000 is a drop in the bucket to what we had to put into our farm to create business. So it's like, maybe if they don't, if that's a struggle, they might not be ready to start. Because they're going to need a lot more than the $35,000 or a 1 or 2 year period to start any kind of business. So that might be part of the problem too, is they're not ready yet. They need to get a little more down the road with how they're going to actually finance the business, because $35,000 is not going to finance a business. It's going to help, but I mean.
I look forward to next month we'll get together and do that. Property opportunities. Is anybody kind of creating a list on your home of some properties that you may or may not know of?
I can jump in here too. So one of the work groups of the Housing Commission has been tasked with this, so that they can push this along more quickly for you. So what I imagine would probably be the low-hanging fruit for that work group. So I suspect that you'll absolutely
Cool. So that's for vacant properties?
It's a combination. It's developable properties and properties that are vacant, but there needs to be an understanding of why a property is vacant. Is it because it's on an unbuildable, that it's rain because it's a swamp, or it's a hill, or it's so fully landlocked that no one would be able to access it.
We have that map that
Right,
Maureen
exactly.
did. Are they using that?
Yeah,
That-
they will. There is no
Okay,
way right now, but they will.
That's got all of that on it.
Right. And then beyond that, what's important is that part of their charge determines some mechanism. Once we've identified those properties, by which they can be made available to the public for purchase, because the city can't do that. So, but that will be one of the charges, and I think it's going to be probably one of those things to get at, because it is the work, a lot of that work's already been done.
Carrie, can you just jump into the conversation and we'll talk about the website update?
I can. I actually have some positive news to share.
Yay.
So I was happy to see this thing on the agenda. Tentatively, the morning of June 30th, we will be doing a soft launch of our new website. We have been working diligently to identify the holder of our domain, and with some contacts provided by one of our current vendors, which we have narrowed down nicely. In the interim, though, they have agreed to host the site with a redirect on our behalf. So
Great.
all good
So
stuff.
who did that?
One of our current web vendors.
Okay.
So they're going to hold on to our domain with a redirect. They have to get access to our page currently.
Okay.
So they're going to,
You finally were able to persuade them to do what you wanted them to do originally,
yeah. We had a meeting,
Good.
so, yeah.
Good. June 3rd, sorry.
30th.
Nice.
Wait a minute. That's in 2 days.
Yeah,
Sweet.
yeah.
Yeah, that's awesome.
I was feeling like no distant future.
And my hunkin' look comes off the front page next to your...
Smaller, lower down.
Oh, no, we'll talk. But we had talked. It's not the impression we had talked already.
We talked.
Is there any more thoughts on maybe sharing office space in downtown Indiana, a location of it, and/or internet speed?
I suggested that you guys might want to take a wander up to the Oneonta, downtown Oneonta Works.
Okay.
That's already been set up across the street from Bruce, I think, is basically. I'm sure Lizard would be thrilled to give you a tour.
It's right over here, isn't it?
Yeah. 162, I think, or something like that, 166, right on that.
Okay.
Is that Downtown Works?
Technically, it's downtown Oneonta Works. There is actually a downtown Works that's a national freaking thing.
Oh, gotcha.
Yeah, so,
Okay.
yeah. As far as it goes.
So it's downtown, you know, works.
Yes, yeah. You have to look to see the Oneonta, but I had to persuade, this is Peter Clark. He'd be stubborn about things.
Any new items? Any opportunity to kind of digest this? Yeah? No late nights?
I don't have glasses on. Can you show me?
It's the City of Onion
Yeah.
redevelopment.
Oh,
We're doing it
gotcha.
back in May.
Yeah.
I'm working my way through it also, so don't think that. Greg, you probably have it memorized, because you don't sleep good. Okay, well, if we don't have any other new business, you guys look like you're excited. Paintball's already gone.